It's time for us to show forth the other side of Nuwapu. And that principle has always been raised amongst the ancient Mitzrayim. You want to call them that, Kemet, you want to call them that, Tamara, whatever you want to call us. And the principle is called Maat. It's the first principle of every order. And the sacred gathering spot is called Waset. It has been translated as Karnak, Aswan, but the sacred spot where the sacred temple was called Waset. You hear me? And the symbol was called Maat. Maat has been often interpreted to mean justice. I think in the Islamic world, the best interpretation of Maat became jihad. And those amongst them that were physical took jihad to mean physical war. And those amongst them called the mutasawwif, or the Sufi, took jihad to mean a spiritual struggle inside oneself against justice or injustice. Quran even said, injustice and impartiality will not be tolerated. So the symbol that you raise is the ostrich feather. You may have noticed it in the hieroglyphs. Many of your ancestors or deities have the symbol of the ostrich feather, and that's called the Maat. That's the foundation of all the mystical orders worldwide, be they Native American, Freemason, Essene, Magus, Knights of Columbus, Shriners, Theosophical Society, Astara, Rosicrucian. They all go back to the Maat. And this is why they say one of the first things that was created was the quill. The quill, which was the pen that did all the inscriptions of the Greek deity Tahuti, was the ostrich feather. They would carve it and they use it, the scribes, to write the many books of ancient Egypt that most people today have forgotten. But that was our symbol. Remember that symbol, Maat. It represents the struggle with inside. The reason why they chose the feather, because a feather is a very sturdy object, but in wind it fluctuates. But if it'll flow with the wind. You notice the Native Americans put feathers on their arrows to make it steer straightly. Well, in ancient Egypt, that same symbol represented steering the Ka and the Ba through these troubled times, or these winds. They call them sentimental winds of life, when pressures come down. The person that has a strong inner side survives. The person who has a weak inner side falls to the wayside, always. Those people whose principles in Nuwapu are based on a spiritual thing will survive any changes. Just as those people who are Ansari spiritual, regardless of where the surface went, they were still Ansars. Whether we was calling ourselves Hebrews, or Nuwapians, or Native Americans, or cowboys, whatever we called ourselves, because their roots in what we were doing were in the spiritual, not in the physical appearance of being a Muslim, wearing a tagiyah, wearing jalabiyah. That wasn't where they were at. They were there spiritually. They were a cosmos. They were a part of the cosmos. The utterance, that word that stirs inside each one of us. And they get anchored in the word. And the foundation of it is the word is true or false. False manifests in the physical. Truth always in the spiritual, because you can't lie in the spiritual sense. You cannot lie to your soul, because you cannot lie to yourself. And that's why in the language Hebrew they had nefesh and in Arabic nefsi. And they had combined the word spirit and self as one word. You could not lie because you cannot betray your spiritual self. You'll tell yourself the truth. So you are your best master, thus you are your best God. Because you cannot lie to God. And the only being that you come in contact with that you cannot lie to is yourself. So God therefore becomes the judge of the judge. That's why he said, I am that I am. Repeated I am twice. I am that I am. They say, oh, I am that which I am, or I am whom I am. He identifies his outer part, his outer being, and his inner being. He never told him his name. When they ask you his name, say I am that I am. You have to learn the principle that I am that I am merely means what you see is what you get. It's a very simple thing. It sounds complicated. They've turned it into all these different mystical interpretations in the Kabbalah of the Jews, but simply means I am that I am. No more, no less. All right? Any questions that you want to? I know one thing everybody keeps asking me, let me add this, is in our principles it says you got to take a long walk on a short path. People say, what do you mean by that? What it means is, I said that way back in 1970. And what I meant by that is we had a very short period of time to take a long walk. It takes most people a lifetime to be just a Christian, or a lifetime to be a Jew, or a lifetime to be an Egyptologist. And I said, well, between 1970 and the year 2000, we have 30 years. We got to take a long walk on a short path. The short path was for 30 years. The long walk was the amount of information and the amount of schools of thought that you would have to go through to be transformed from mortals to immortality. Transformed back into gods, back into deities, back into Neptune. That was going to be a long journey on a very short path. That's what it meant. If you want to be a good cosmos, you've got to learn to take a long walk on a short path. And most of you who've walked with me for years have gotten so much information that it baffles the normal pedestrian when they encounter you on the streets. How could you possibly know that much information? The answer is, well, I took a long walk on a short path. And you're still on just one of the long paths. It's taking you to a short end of a stick. Any questions? Yes. Make yourself heard, please.
What do we do about the knowledge we didn't get? Like, say for people that came when we were in the Wapo, how does the knowledge from the other schools behind us affect us being a God?
That's such a good question. It's frightening. Because what I found out, that you have two types of old timers. I used to say years ago, old timers are faithful but not true. You have two types of old timers. Those that were rooted in the community physically, and again, those that were rooted in the community spiritually. Those that are rooted in the community spiritually have a lot of spiritual insight on things they learned from me over the years. And that's their strength. But those that are rooted in the community physically were looking at me the way Musa looked at El Khidir and thought they knew what they was looking at and thought they was figuring out what I was doing. And as we get down this far, some of them look over now and see they never really understood the man they was talking to. You follow? So some of you people who just got here will never be able to have those schools. And you should have had by now spiritual masters raised amongst us who had taken that long walk on a short path and been able to come and instruct y'all in the many experiences that they went through while walking that path with me. Unfortunately, so many of them didn't because their hearts wasn't in it. They were just here physically. They wasn't here spiritually. They never really heard the message. You with me? So you missed those journeys. It doesn't mean, believe me, that old timers are good. That's not true. Most of them are faithful, like I said, but they're not true to me. They're the first one to stab me in the back. You follow? Because they were not groomed to be true. They came out of a world where dishonesty and self-preservation and self-righteousness and ego was the reigning force, and introduced them to a culture like the Ansar Allah tried to introduce, which meant restraining yourselves from the world and the families and everything else to prepare yourself. Most of them couldn't do it. They only pretended they did while they was in Ansar Allah. They were still on the phone, they were still doing all the things that they was told not to do. So they never really got the spiritual side of what I was teaching. And we had hopes in this time that it would come forth again. We're short on time, a little bit of time to get the job done, but it's time for us to raise again. And if people here can keep the secret sacred, then things will be revealed to them. Time, a little bit of time to get the job done, but it's time for us to raise again. And if people here can keep the secret sacred, then things will be revealed to them. As of now, I haven't really opened the doors to to ancient Egypt to you and given you the secrets that we have kept sacred for so long in Wasa. Knowledge that you're supposed to know about yourself and how it all happened. I haven't done it as of yet. I talk about history, I talk about science, I talk about the creation and destruction of the world, but I haven't pulled that elite group aside and passed on those secret words, the word that Asif wanted from Ra so bad. The secret words that the Freemasons have been trying to get, that gives you that power of divinity. You can't pass it on until people are ready. And you'll know when you're ready when you become your own judge. You follow? So it doesn't make no difference if you was here 20 years or 20 minutes. If you intend to do the right thing, if you intend to work by spirit and not by body, if you intend to become a part of the rays of the sun's light, it'll be easy and you won't have missed nothing. But if you come here and you just want to be a part of a mystical order because it makes you feel spiritual, you don't take your initiations, you don't follow the instructions, you don't do anything that is subscribed to in lessons, then you're just wasting my and your time. And it's just something else to do. In the Freemason Lodge, there are those that are serious, and there are those that just buy their way through the 3 degrees. You follow? You just read them and they just walk around Master Mason with a ring and a symbol, and they don't even have a clue of the secrets and the hidden meanings of these things. None whatsoever. But they think they do. They belong to fraternity. They go to the lodge meetings. They go to conventions. They put on the apron. They put on the 3 great lights. They tote their Bible, compass, and square, and they learn certain of the triad terms that are used, you know, from degree to degree as they raise. But they don't. None of the. They never pass the royal arc and turn right. They pass the royal arc and they're hit with a light in their eyes. And that light I spoke about several times is a blinding light. On this side of intellect, light is blinding. And the way to teach a student is to teach him about the light. Tell him the light is the knowledge, the light is the intelligence, the light is the intellect, the light is the guide, the light is the way, the light is this. But light blinds. Darkness don't blind. And all Freemasons are blindfolded, as I mentioned just yesterday. And while they're blindfolded, in that period that they're waiting in the lodge for someone to remove that blindfold, the inquisitive mind starts to work. In the darkness, the mind starts to speed up, starts to race. What's going on? What's going to happen? What's coming up next? What's going on? Who's this? What's that scent I smell? What's this here? This wood? You understand? Why the cable toe? Why my leg? One pants leg raised. Why this? Why that? You follow? That's when they're divine. Once they remove the blindfold, then they're blind. When you hit them with the light of Freemasonry and start giving them the principles of Freemasonry, they start giving them the tools of Freemasonry, and they put the Bible in their hand, and they point down on the altar, and they open the Bible, and there they put a compass and a square, and they look down and say, these are the 3 great lights. And they look down at them. When in actuality, 3 candles are surrounding the altar, and those are the real 3 great lights. When they have the person look down, they point down, he looks down, looking away from the 3 candles that represent the 3 suns, they know right there that he is blinded by the light. And that light is the compass and the square, and how they will build this Bible around him and reshape him from a God into a mere man. You understand? So in our order, all the symbolisms and all of the tools that we use all are geared towards you being able to see in the dark and avoid the beam of the light. You understand? Yes.
How do you know once you reach that point of enlightenment, then what?
See? See the word? See the word? Enlightenment? I'm just saying, see how they did it? I'll tell you when. When you get to the point in the enlightenment that in all that you read and all that you study, you still feel there is a, what's the word? Say it again. A void. And what follows void in the Bible? Void and darkness. Once you finish all the studies and all the religious dogma and all the arguments of who was here first and who's the greatest and genetic this and science this, and then you still are hungry for something. You follow? And that is the spiritual journey. from void into darkness. And in darkness is tranquility. But they've taught you the prince of darkness, the devil, is evil. You see the reverse? And the light is right. The warmth, bathe in the light. In ancient Egypt, what they had was the three sons that you know as what? Shemeth, Utu, and Asu. They had them as Atum, Atun, and Amun. And those are the three lights that you see in the Masonic Lodge representing three candles, or even on the floor of our lodge, the three candles. You only need to light a candle if you're in the, let me ask you about that for a minute. If you're in the dark, are you with me? And the dark is ignorance, absence of intelligence, absence of common sense, evil. How do you have the intellect to know to strike the match? How do you know to light the candle to get the light if darkness is ignorance? So you see where the deception came in. The beings that were in darkness knew about the light. People in light cannot see darkness. While you're on earth and you look through the day, you know there's light, but right outside the earth's atmosphere, you know there's darkness. Which is more, the light that surrounds the planet or the darkness that is the universe? So which one would be more likely where the Supreme would dwell? In that light that is contained and restrained within an atmosphere based on reflection, or in a boundless universe? In a boundless universe where darkness is, but there must be intelligence. If that intelligence or if that darkness was transformed into light by combining hydrogen and helium atoms to make them create a cycle, to create a sun, to send down a beam and explode and created solar systems, there was some intelligence involved there. But that intelligence was in darkness, and the results was the light. So void and darkness was intelligent, because even in their Bible it says what? But what does it say before that? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and what? And void and darkness upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the surface of the water. Start again. After it was void and darkness upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the surface of water, the Spirit of God was moving in, and then he said, let there be. And that's when he starts a chain reaction of consideration. You know what I mean by that? God created and then had to stop to see whether it would be good. He looked and said, and he saw that it was good. So when things got into light, it did not necessarily mean that they were good, because God created these lights and then said he saw that the light that he created was, so the light was not necessarily good. And that's why in Islam they had Nur and Nar, and Nur represented the light and Nar represented the fire, and therefore that light was not necessarily good. It was always, as I said years ago, independence of how one uses it. You can strike a match to light a candle to guide, or you can strike a match to burn down a house and kill everyone. There is temperament in light. There's no temperament in darkness where there is no attempt. Because in darkness, your only fear is tripping over something you don't know is there. So if you hold still and hold your peace in darkness, divine manifests. But where there's light, there's doubt. Yeah? You'll know because your mind will reach a point where you start to say to yourself, there is more to know. There is more to know. And that hunger will cause the divine in you to come forward if you discipline yourself. You hear me? And there is more to know. And it's not out of reach. It's out of trust. I can't pass the secrets on to you people until I know you're ready for them. They've been protected for thousands of years. Until I know you're ready for them. They've been protected for thousands of years. There's nothing to play with. You hear me? Yes.
So is it good to sleep in total darkness when you go to bed? Because sometimes
it would make a difference, because once you go to sleep, you won't see the light is on or not anyway. So it really doesn't make a difference. Those are religious mythologies created while you was in certain schools on that, what? Short path, right? On them short, had to teach you the way they thought in order for you to digest those schools thoroughly. Had to teach you Islam as if I believed it, in order to get you to believe it, because all it was about is belief. And then we had to get to the point where we had no longer a need for beliefs. If also there it said, don't sleep in dark. Why? Because the monotheistic principle, which is the principles of the physical, what's void of any spiritual knowledge, is always consumption by fire due to judgment. But in this case, the God of light is not using it for intellect, he's using it as nar, fire. The word they use in the Torah, which they borrowed from the Sumerians, was or, flames, light, in the sense of burning. So this God warns you that if you are not obedient to me, out of whatever other gods that you chose, I will burn you up. You hear me? And you're taught that in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. If you're not obedient to me, on Judgment Day, I will judge you and I will burn you up. So the principles of monotheistic beliefs is fear of being burnt up, being consumed by fire. Meanwhile, they teach you, dwell in the light, stay away from the darkness of ignorance, dwell in the light, and then tell you at the end of the road that we're going to burn you up if you don't do everything the way I say do. It's right, because you dwell in the light. And it's the sun and the environment that ages and kills you. So you're already in that path if you are a physical being. If you are a spiritual being, then you spend the short time that you walk under the sun's rays to raise yourself spiritually past the care of the physical body. And it'll care for itself. It'll sustain you if you stop what we call patronizing it and flattering it and gorging it and stuffing it and painting it and all the different things you do to it, where it becomes incapable of performing for itself. You maim your own body. You follow? And your body is just a vehicle to carry the spiritual you through this earthly journey. And you're supposed to be raising yourself in degrees spiritually, so that by the time you take the garment of flesh off, the rest of the path is easy. You just blend back into the rays. You see what I'm saying? So it's not best to sleep in dark or light or dark. You follow? Because regardless, when you go into that state, past sleep paralysis, into what they call sleep, you don't see it anyway. And if anything is going to attack you, it's because you allowed it to and believe it can. All right? Yes?
Does lucid dreaming or waking sleep have to do with a certain state of consciousness?
Say it again.
Does lucid dreaming, or it's called waking sleep, have to do with a certain state of consciousness?
Yeah, it has to do more so with the vibrations of the body. The body is vibrating at a certain pace. That's why you have people say, when I'm getting ready to go into a transcendental state, I must drop my body down to alpha wave. Now, why would they go to the first letter of the Greek alphabet, which would be Aleph or Aleph or A? Why would they say? So where is man vibrating? Well, man is vibrating an eighth up. He's vibrating at an octave above. And he has to make that journey down to alpha wave, where his body therefore is in tune with the Om. You follow that? Now, in between those, everybody knows what octave is, 8 tones, right? In that, let's say, regression of sound going down, there are other beings who are able to vibrate in and out. And those beings step within your dreams, because while you're dreaming, you start dropping down. Have you ever listened to a cat when a cat is sleeping, how it purrs? You ever heard a cat? Anybody have owned a cat before? And a cat purrs when they sleep? You have a certain purring sound? That's because they're dropping down. Human beings usually drop no farther than out of the 8 to 4, so they stay in what's called sleep paralysis. They're in a paralyzed state, and oftentimes, if they wake up at that point, before their body has regressed to 1 to start the journey back up for waking up, they'll wake up and their body will still be asleep. And their eyes will open and they will be paralyzed, thus the term sleep paralysis. And in that state, the body panics, and it goes to the brain and shoots directly to the hippocampus area of the brain and starts to find solutions to things on this side and that side at the same time, and thus hallucination begins. People start to hallucinate. They start to have visions of things that they create or have experienced themselves. Remember, man is a creator and thus a designer. So he can design monsters to terrorize him or angels to guide him. He can fly as high as he wants, or swim as long, as deep as he wants in that world. In that world at the 4th level coming down from the 8 octaves. You follow that? So it does definitely have to do with a mental state, which has to do with the vibrational level of the human being. And human beings have to learn to travel that octave back and forth at random. And that's what wants to teach people how man starts at the 8th, drops to the 7th, and 6th, and 5, and gets all the way down when at any given time you can go into alpha, as they call it. You follow it? And your body just purr. Your heart starts to slow up. You breathe less, and then you start to make that transit state. If you get all the way down to 1, you're with me? Then you can get a new boost. Just like when you're extremely tired because you stayed up for 2 days, you find at the 48th hour, you get, or even the 24th hour, you get a boost. And you get this, what they call a second breath. You follow? You're working on etheric now. You're no longer working on blood. That extra boost you get when you're extremely tired and driving, all of a sudden you say, I gotta wake up. Boom, you get this surge and you're able to drive another 100 miles. That's moving into the etheric. When you learn to take this journey backwards, back into yourself, you follow the journey inward, when you get down to 1 and you learn to vibrate there, then it's easy for me to take you over into the etheric world. Because on the other side of this 1, hydrogen existence starts 1 ether. And all the way up to 8. When you get to, in the element sense, watch what happens. Because the element sense is from hydrogen to 8. And 8 is? Oxygen. You see that? A gaseous form. So when you come down from 8 to 1 and go up to ether, when you get to 8 ether, you make a transformation into etherian form, another gaseous form, another form of gas. And you'll be able to travel that ladder backwards and forward. Then if anything begins to happen to you on the physical plane, between 8 and 1, all you do is drop your vibrational level and transport your essence into the etheric world and wait to see what happens in the physical. If the physical body becomes damaged to the point where you no longer use it, but you have a job to do, you're able to pick anyone from your family who can vibrate on with the same type of blood, because the liquid is the oxygen, water, H2O, same kind of blood as yours. You could jump into their body to get a certain assignment done. Oftentimes, relatives will come back to a person in their family who they think are vibrating the same, and the person becomes afraid from seeing this gaseous etheric image in their room, and the adrenaline produces a serum that cuts off or builds a gate where this walk-in cannot get into your body. So your grandmother who came back to get a message to someone who needed them comes at the head of your bed, but then she turns and leaves. And she just says, I'm well, everything is fine, because you closed the gate through fear. You follow? We have to learn that monotheism created fear to cut you off from the spiritual world. Their whole philosophy, their whole doctrine of religion is based on stay afraid, fear Allah, fear the Lord, fear retribution, fear hell, fear judgment, fear. You notice that? So you don't stay in a celeste state, a bliss state. You stay in an ever regretful state, because it's near impossible as a predominantly physical being most of the time not to do disagreeable things. Right? And once you do a disagreeable thing, and the law is if you do one sin, you're going to hell, you inherit a new, more dreadful attribute, guilt. And enough guilt will make you say, what difference does it make? I'm already going to hell. I'm already a bad person. I'm already a disagreeable person, so I might as well not try to make the journey back. And that could not be far from the truth. Once you learn not to fear, once you take on the role of God and take on responsibilities for your body and your soul and your spirit, those 3 great principles, that's the 3 great sins. When you conquer them, you conquer it all. And you can make that journey back and forth. That's what it was about. You studied books and you may have got bored, so well, I've been reading, I don't see where I'm getting any spiritual, because it's about waiting until the people who join, because they want a transcendental meditation journey, get fed up and leave. And those people who want to stay will be here, and then we can get down to business. You follow what I'm saying?